So welcome guys. In this video, I am not just going to cover RDR1 story, but I also going to cover Red Dead Revolver story, which is the first game of RDR series. So, let's start with Red Dead Revolver. Our main hero here is Red Harlow. The Red Dead series is set during America's Wild West era. Back in the 1880s, Red Harlow's father, Nate Harlow, and his partner Griff discovered a huge stash of gold. To celebrate their discovery, both of them get unique revolvers made. However, Griff was eventually captured by the Mexican army and sentenced to death. At that point, Griff made a deal with General Diego. In exchange for half of the gold treasure, he asked Diego to have his former partner, Nate Harlow, killed. The men sent by General Diego Darren and his gang managed to kill Nate and his wife. However, Nate's son, Red, uses his father's revolver to shoot off Darren's hand and escapes. As time passes, Red Harlow grows up to become a famous bounty hunter. Together with his allies, he sets out to avenge his family and eventually kills both Darren and General Diego. During his journey, Red discovers the truth. It was his father's former partner, Griffin, who had betrayed them and arranged their deaths in the first place. To get to Griffon, Red enters a battle royale competition. It's a gun dueling tournament. The main reason Red enters this competition is because Griffin is the leader behind it. Griffin recognizes Red and tries to have him killed during the tournament. However, Red defeats every opponent who stands in his way. In the end, he faces Griffin in one final duel and defeats him as well. And that was the backstory of Red Dead Revolver. Now, let's move on to the main story of Red Dead Redemption. The main hero of Red Dead Redemption is John Marston, who was born in 1873. John's mother was a prostitute, and she died shortly after giving birth to him. His father was a Scottish immigrant. When John was 8 years old, his father was killed during a fight. After that, John was forced to live in an orphanage. However, he eventually ran away and met Dutch Van der Linde, who took him into his gang. Dutch taught John how to use guns, hunt, and survive in the harsh America of that era. Because of this, Dutch became like a father figure to John. As he grew older, John became one of the gang's most important members. He eventually married Abigail, a former prostitute associated with the gang. Alongside his companions Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela, John became a key member of Dutch's gang. But after the gang's golden age came to an end, it slowly began to fall apart. Following a major bank robbery that went completely wrong, the gang left John behind to die. Somehow, John survived. After this, he decided he wanted to leave the outlaw life behind. To start a new life, he settled down as a farmer with his wife Abigail, his son Jack Marston, and uncle. In 1911, the newly formed Bureau of Investigation, known today as the FBI, begins hunting down outlaw gangs. Their goal is to earn promotions and help create a more civilized, outlaw-free America. And here, these agents take John family hostage and force John into helping them. They order him to track down and kill two of the most prominent members of his former gang, Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela. In return, they promise to release John's family. With no other choice, John agrees. To save his family, he leaves his hometown of Blackwater and travels to Armadillo. There, he learns that Bill Williamson is living at Fort Mercer with his new gang. John immediately heads there, intending to kill him. However, things don't go as planned. Bill shoots John in the stomach and leaves him behind to die. Fortunately, a local rancher named Bonnie McFarlane finds the badly wounded John and takes him to her ranch. She cares for him and helps him recover over the following weeks. Once John is healthy again, he begins helping Bonnie with various jobs around the ranch to repay her kindness. During this time, John also meets the local U.S. Marshal, Lee Johnson. Lee Johnson also wants Bill Williamson removed from the area. To track him down, John ends up forming some very unusual alliances. He meets Nigel West Dickens, a smooth-talking con artist, an eccentric treasure hunter, Seth, and an alcoholic Irishman known simply as Irish. Working together, they come up with a solid plan to attack Fort Mercer. John and his allies storm the fort and wipe out Bill's men. However, after all that effort, they discover that Bill isn't there at all. He has already fled to Mexico and joined up with Javier Escuela. John follows them into Mexico, where he finds the country in the middle of a revolution. There, John meets Colonel Agustin Allende, along with his right-hand man, Captain Vicente de Santa. John makes a deal with them. He will help suppress the rebellion, and in return, they will help him find Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela. As John works for Colonel Allende, he begins to see just how badly the people of Mexico are suffering under the rule of these corrupt leaders. Eventually, John meets Abraham Reyes, the leader of the rebels. Realizing who is truly fighting for the country's future, John decides to help Reyes overthrow the regime and make him the Mexico's new leader. In return, they make the same deal with him. Eventually, Colonel Allende finally gives John the location of Javier Escuela and orders Captain De Santa to take him there. But when John arrives, he realizes that Allende and De Santa have betrayed him. Because he had been helping the rebels, they intended to have him killed. Fortunately, rebel leader Abraham Reyes saves John's life. John then teams up with his allies in Mexico, Landon Ricketts, a retired outlaw legend, and Luisa Fortuna, one of the rebels and a close supporter of Reyes. Together, they track down Captain De Santa and kill him. Soon afterward, John discovers Javier Escuela's whereabouts. Before the confrontation ends, Escuela reveals that Bill Williamson is under the protection of Colonel Allende. At this point in the game, the player is given a choice. You can either kill these former gang members or capture them and hand them over to the Bureau. John then joins forces with Reyes and launches an assault on El Presidio, the heavily fortified stronghold controlled by Allende and his forces. During the attack, John kills both Colonel Allende and Bill Williamson, helping Abraham Reyes seize power and become the new leader of Mexico. With his business in Mexico finally finished, John returns to Blackwater and meets Bureau agents Edgar Ross and his men. He demands that they release his family as promised. Instead, the Bureau gives him another task. This time, they order John to hunt down and kill his former mentor and gang leader, Dutch Van der Linde. The Bureau already knows Dutch's location. After the collapse of his old gang, Dutch had begun building a new gang while living among Native American groups in the American frontier. To fund this new operation, Dutch carried out numerous bank heists and robberies. However, working alongside the Bureau, John Marston manages to foil most of these crimes. Eventually, the Bureau, the US Army, and John launch a full-scale assault on Dutch's hideout. Wounded and on the run, Dutch desperately tries to escape. John pursues him all the way to the top of a mountain cliff. When the two finally confront each other, John hesitates to shoot the man who once raised him like a son. Before ending his own life, Dutch warns John not to trust the Bureau and tells him that the government will never truly let him go. With Dutch gone, Edgar Ross finally releases John's family. John returns home and is reunited with Abigail, Jack, and Uncle. For the first time in years, John focuses entirely on his family and on rebuilding the ranch. He is fully committed to leaving his outlaw past behind and living an honest life. Sometime later, Bonnie McFarlane contacts John and invites him back to her ranch. Abigail becomes suspicious after hearing about Bonnie's telegram and decides to accompany John when he goes to meet her. During the visit, it becomes clear that Bonnie once had feelings for John. However, by this point she realizes that John is devoted to his family. Basically, she has been friend-zoned. Quite relatable for you guys. After enjoying a few peaceful years with his family, John's quiet life comes to an end. The US Army, working alongside the Bureau, launches a full-scale assault on his ranch. Their goal is simple: eliminate the last remaining outlaw. To protect his family, John fights wave after wave of soldiers. But he realizes that the army is too large and that they have specifically come for him. Knowing that his family will never be safe as long as he is alive, John helps Abigail and Jack escape. He understands that if he runs away, the government will continue hunting all of them. So, in order to finally atone for his past, John chooses to sacrifice himself. In one of the most memorable moments in gaming history, John steps out of the barn and faces the soldiers alone. He is riddled with bullets and killed. This marks the end of John Marston's story. Jack Marston later buries his father on a hill overlooking the family ranch. 3 years after these events, Abigail also passes away, leaving Jack completely alone. As he grows older, Jack follows a path similar to his father's and becomes an outlaw himself. Eventually, Jack tracks down Edgar Ross, the former Bureau agent responsible for John's death. In a final duel, Jack kills Ross and avenges his family. So guys, that was the complete story of Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption is considered one of Rockstar's greatest story-driven games, and the storytelling in Red Dead Redemption 1 is absolutely phenomenal. Now you guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, hype. Support me.